Dr. Jen Welter. We are here to bring you the Juke, the draft recap edition, discussing the winners and losers of the 2021 NFL draft and the most exciting aspects, including one Aaron Rodgers, which we'll talk about all that drama going on in Green Bay. Jen, how'd you enjoy the draft?
Well, the first thing I'm going to bring you, Mitch, is can you place this person?
Is that Vince McMahon? Oh, well, that's Mac Jones.
Who am I? Mac Jones. Like, what would you compare that walk to?
I say Vince McMahon.
Yeah, kind of looked like that. I mean, it was very, and then he
maybe
had
Conor McGregor-ish.
There was also a very dad bod vibe.
He does have a dad bod.
He does. Like, how are you just drafted as an NFL quarterback to your Patriots, by the way, slid way down there? I mean, Belichick pulled a Belichick yet again. Mm-hmm. I did hear, however, the Saints tried to trade up to get him, but they could only get to 16. So Belichick got them, and he said, so, I mean, I did not expect Mac Jones to look so like with the dad bod, almost like his head was too small on his body. Maybe that's why he went so strong after the hat. I don't know, but that was one of my highlights of the draft. Not only his walk, but actually where he went, because I think I know I didn't really expect him to slide that far. But yet again, the Patriots do what they do and get talent where they may or may not have expected it. I also thought it was great that your guy, Bill Belichick, did reassure Cam and say, you know, they're going to have to fight it out. I don't think it was a matter of we went after a quarterback. I think it was we can't not take this guy, which was interesting.
I think it's always with Bill Belichick, we can't not take this guy. I don't think he ever feels in a given year, at least from what I've come to know as a Patriots fan, that he is going out intently to get this specific player in the draft. And I think that's what enables his long-term success, because he's not attached to any player, whether it be on his roster currently or one in the draft. But he did reassure Cam Newton that he'll be their quarterback. And I do believe him when he says they'll be Cam Newton's team this year. And I think any rookie quarterback that were to go to New England would at least take a year to learn this system. So I don't think Mac's going to be playing until 2022.
No, I don't think so either. But you do have a strong backup that you can get ready to have a limited playbook, which is what you need from a backup, right? They're not going to have the whole playbook. They're going to have some things that they do and do it well, like kind of in case of emergency, break glass to activate. Right. But I don't think it displaces Cam. I don't think that Cam should take it as anything but like, yo, bro, let me take you on a runway and show you not only how to dress, but how to walk. And, you know, maybe he can lighten him up a little bit by bringing him onto his show, Sip and Smoke, because a combination of those might have helped the runway walk a little bit. So maybe look to see how that mentorship plays off both on the field and in terms of a little bit of swag. Because I'd like to see a little bit of a remix, Cam helping Mac Jones.
Honestly, I thought part of the reason a lot of the fans around the NFL didn't love Mac Jones, specifically Niners fans, when they heard he might go number 3, is because of the way he looks. Dead serious. He does not have the swag factor at all.
He doesn't at all. And I actually, interestingly enough, was hearing rumors earlier when they were saying that, who was it? Gosh, I just read it earlier when they were saying, I got distracted by Tom Brady, but that, you know, they didn't think he was number 3 on, Trey Lance was number 3 on their board originally. They thought it was Mac Jones, but that the 49ers might have actually fell to pressure to have him not be the guy. And I thought that was pretty interesting because Shanahan has said, no, he was always the guy. We always wanted Trey Lance, but unless it was a smokescreen, generally when there's smoke, there's some fire. And I don't know about you, but I was not thinking Trey Lance at number 3.
I'm kind of buying it in terms of they traded to 3 to make sure they could get a quarterback, but they weren't sure who the quarterback would be. That's kind of what I'm buying, even though it does appear to be backwards. Like when you trade up, you would know who you're taking. But because of all those rumors, it's hard not to believe it.
Right. This is what I read earlier. It was Mike Lombardi. Mike Lombardi said, I'm not buying it. It was Trey Lance all along. Anybody you talk to in the NFL that has sources, they aren't buying that either. SF can say it was Trey all along. That's a crock of crap. They traded up to get Mac Jones, and the outside pressure became really bad, which really I was like, oh, okay. Like, we're not even going to buy it for a second. He threw it all out there and threw it hard. Like that was like that wasn't even like I mean, it was straight fire on that one. And so, we don't know. I mean, and that's a tough thing, right? When you talk to the reporters, there is misinformation. Teams do that on purpose to throw you off. And, I don't know who they thought they could really throw off with number 3 when you know what number 1 and 2 were doing. So yeah, I don't know who you were throwing off except for maybe yourself, but it's interesting because unless you just said we wanted to get to number 3 to guarantee we could get who we wanted when we decided them. That seems like a whole lot of draft capital to have if you didn't say this has got to be our franchise guy.
Yeah, I guess we'll come to find out over the years. I think with the quarterbacks, which was my most fascinating story of the draft coming in and also coming out of the draft, I think all of them landed in pretty ideal situations, or at least situations that I think fit them. Trey Lance with the 49ers, and just knowing Kyle Shanahan's creativity with the run game, I think can use Trey Lance's ability to run as a quarterback the best. And I think Mac Jones being in a drop back pass game, such as the McDaniels offense, will be really fun to watch. And of course, the first 2 picks were going to be the first 2 picks. The one I'm curious about is Justin Fields going to Chicago. Jen, how do you feel about that fit?
I'll be interested to see it because they've just done a really terrible job having a consistent narrative at quarterback.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they necessarily planned on him being there. I don't feel like that was, I don't know if I ever feel like Chicago has a plan right now. Just being straight up honest, like, I don't think they were like, we got to have this guy. Because they were like, oh, we've got this guy, and we actually passed on Mahomes to get Trubinsky, and oh yeah, we went and got Dalton, and he's the guy, and oh, weren't we going to get Russell Wilson, right? Like, I hope for his sake that it's a good situation. I don't have a lot of faith in offense when it comes to the Chicago Bears. I don't know what you get out of the Trubinsky offense that could actually make you feel good, but I definitely think he's an upgrade. But does he even play? It's hard.
I think he'll play sooner rather than later, and it's because of the fans in Chicago. The first time Andy Dalton drops back and throws an incomplete pass at the leg of his running back, the fans are going to boo him out of the building and want Justin Fields in the game.
Mitch, are you saying you've seen that before?
I have seen that before, yes, specifically in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rough place to play. It can be as cold as the weather, let's put it that way, and the breeze is it is very consistent. They don't call it the Windy City for nothing. Like, you better have your stuff together because otherwise, you're going to move out of there as fast as the wind. And let's talk about moving out of there. Mm-hmm. Can we talk about another quarterback that we've heard a lot about in recent days? Can we talk Aaron Rodgers?
Let's do it.
I mean, I've heard so much from Aaron Rodgers now. Like, first he was on Jeopardy. Now his future with the Green Bay Packers is in jeopardy. He's making comparisons. Teammates are coming out saying, you know, he told them last season he wouldn't be here. I mean, I get that with Love, and I would be disgruntled by some of their draft picks, no doubt. Like, yeah. I don't have a lot of faith in that. But does he have the pull, number one, to get his GM gone? Number two, isn't it harder because there's no owner in Green Bay? And what is it? What do you have to do to actually get that done? I don't even know what that process is, right? Is there somebody who can pull the trigger? Because the GM's not going to fire himself. That much is certain. And were the Broncos tipping their hat, we'll bring that back, to the fact that they would like to get Aaron Rodgers by not getting a quarterback and actually selecting Surtain?
I think the Broncos would love to have Aaron Rodgers. I just don't know if they're going to be able to pull it off. I don't know what Green Bay is going to be willing to accept. I think they're going to play this game of, okay, Aaron, sit at home. You know, we'll just play Jordan Love. Like, I honestly feel like, yes, they'd love to have Aaron Rodgers, but the Packers are not going to fall into a trap and, you know, let him have his way. It's difficult. As you said, they don't have an owner, but does that even enable their quarterback more? Because he becomes almost the biggest voice in the room. Like, if Tom Brady in New England were to say something, like Robert Kraft is the guy that would step in, right? Ultimately, he has the decision, or Bill Belichick even above that. So it's a really interesting.
President? Who hires in Green Bay?
Like, right? I don't even know.
Is it the president? Because like, who is above the GM? And I honestly had never really thought about it before, right? In terms of a Green Bay scenario, because why would you, right? Like, it's not usually like we get the decision. But is going to Green Bay the most secure general manager job in the world, since there is no owner?
Yes.
And who made the decision to part ways with Mike McCarthy? Because wasn't that Aaron Rodgers being upset too? And
yeah, that was pretty much Aaron Rodgers having his way and wanting a new coach because he was sick of McCarthy.
Right. So now he's been sick of the head coach. He got rid of that guy. Now I'm sick of the GM. Can I get rid of that guy too? And will I then crown myself prince of everything because I've now gotten rid of everyone? Would you like to make the hiring decision too, Aaron? Or would you like to be the GM and the quarterback?
I think Aaron Rodgers wants to be LeBron James. I think that's what he's going for. He wants to be the coach, the GM, the star player. He wants to be everything.
I mean, right now I'm thinking, who is acting like a big prima donna?
Did you hear what Terry Bradshaw said about Aaron Rodgers at all?
Wasn't it that he made me think he was a baby or weak or something?
He said something along those lines, yes.
Yes, it was something that made me think that this is kind of Aaron Rodgers-esque right now. Like, you see the monkey here? Like, I don't know what's going on. But it's not right. Like, this is not actually, but this is how I would feel right now with the ups and downs of being a Green Bay Packers fan. Like, are we advancing? Are we going backwards? Who fires the GM? He's already fired the head coach. And I mean, I get it, right? Like, I wanted him to have more weapons as well, but like, at what time, at what place is all of your, tricks of the trade becoming just being a really not team person at all, right? Like, if I'm teammates, I'm starting to go, oh okay, like, fearless leader or not?
Can I be realistic about this situation right now? The Green Bay Packers do not have a bad roster. Can we stop this? Okay, I'll go through the roster for you right now.
Do it.
They have Aaron Jones, who is a top 10 running back. They have Devontae Adams, who is a top 2, maybe number 1 receiver. They had a tight end who caught over 10 touchdowns. They had a left tackle who's an all-pro. They had the best center in the league, who they didn't re-sign, but they did have the best center in the league. They had Kenny Clark in the D-line, who's a stud, a Pro Bowler. Zadarius Smith, who's a double-digit sack player. They have Jair Alexander, who's a Pro Bowl cornerback. They have all of these players. I mean, this is a loaded team. Sure, could you have another receiver? Was it a mistake to take Jordan Love or A.J. Dillon? Would you like to have those picks back? Yes. But at a certain point, like, where are you going that's better than this situation? One. And number two, you're running out of excuses as to why you can't win this elusive Super Bowl that you've been chasing.
Especially if you got your head coach fired, your GM fired, and you're never happy. Like, I mean, and reports are that they've offered him contract deals that would make him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And then what Brett Favre said, oh, it's not about money. It's not about money. There's plenty of money. It's about, just what you need to be surrounded by or something. I forget what he said, but I go, okay. I mean, of course, if I'm a quarterback, I want targets, no doubt. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are certain things that, I want. But at some point, like, I question what kind of teammate you are. Like, who are you to be around? And is it always going to be about you? Or is it ever going to be like, I don't know, you'd be Tom Brady and like take a pay cut so that you could bring back all of the starters and have the fixings to have another dynasty. Like, at what point do I want to be surrounded by Aaron Rodgers, who is complaining about everything, versus, say, Patrick Mahomes, who was complaining about another player who's not even on his team, potentially losing his dollars for an off-season workout that they now don't have to do because, he was working out and got injured not at the facility. So
Juwan James.
Right. And you have Mahomes standing up for a guy who's not even on his team, right? And saying, this makes me question the CBA, as it should. And at the same time, you have Aaron Rodgers saying, well, we should fire everybody. And I just know it doesn't matter what you do. I'm not coming back here. I don't like it. Like, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I think the comparisons between, you brought up Brady, you brought up Mahomes. I think that's the thing about Aaron Rodgers, where I've never quite been a fan of him myself, is I appreciate the talent, but he's never given off the vibe of a true leader. And I think that is what has held him back from winning more championships. He's a 3-time MVP. He's a Hall of Famer. There's no doubt. He's one of the greatest talents of all time, but you can be the most talented player ever. But if you do not lead a team, to just properly, you can be held back. You can hold yourself back. So Aaron Rodgers is a fascinating case. I don't want to see him get traded because I think of him as a Packer. And I also think that's kind of the easy way out. I don't want Green Bay to just be like, oh, we're going to trade you, unless they get one heck of a haul, really.
Right. And, but then you do look at the Broncos and you think it doesn't quite make sense. I mean, I know we had Teddy there, right? So you could say it was faith in Teddy that kept them from picking a quarterback, or you could say they had their eyes on the prize elsewhere and went and, put stock in their defense. How do you feel about that? I mean, we hear rumors of Denver. Like, that's really all I've heard is like Denver, Denver, Denver. So if it's not Green Bay, it's Denver. Do you think we knew that before the draft? How do you feel about Denver?
Well, on paper, Denver's the only place that it would actually make sense because they're the only team that's not necessarily tied to a quarterback. Even though they traded for Bridgewater, I believe most of his contract's being paid by Carolina. I think he's only being paid like $3 million by Denver. Drew Lock's on a rookie contract. Maybe they could send Drew Lock to Green Bay as another, a competition piece for Jordan Love, potentially another young quarterback there. They certainly have no other needs outside of quarterback, and they are a team that is in win now. As we've discussed, they have a loaded roster across the board, everything that Aaron Rodgers could ask for. Plus, he wants to be on the West Coast or near the West Coast. So it would make sense for Rodgers. It would make sense for the Broncos. It's just up to the Packers if they want to make the move.
Yeah. Speaking of moves, we have the Kentucky Derby this weekend.
Yeah.
And one of those narratives made me pick up a friend of mine.
Oh, who's that?
Well, it's the closest bunny I had, who has a little phrase. Hide me, Eddie, please. Did you see the comparisons of your guy, Tom Brady, and the villain from Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I did. I love the hat, everything about it.
It was pretty
looks like I just won my 7th Super Bowl. I'm taking over the world. I'm a super villain. Right. Somebody's going to have to stop me.
He did. He's like, if Bill Belichick is Dr. Evil.
Yeah.
Then clearly Tom Brady has become the villain in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So I brought our friend here as a reminder to that. And meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers was compared to the guy who was there to arrest Tom Brady based on his outfit. So let's just say, Rodgers, you might want to just sit with Brady for a few lessons on like one fashion. I don't ever want to be the one whose line is that you're there to arrest the guy who looks like he's there to take over the world. That's not a good narrative. So we might want to step that game up and like worry a little bit more about that in your teammates than like everything that makes me want to get you a Kleenex.
You know what I think it is, Jen? I think Aaron Rodgers' look was actually the look of running away from Tom Brady, trying to go to the AFC. That's his look.
I said earlier, I think he could get a deal from that company like Untuck It, because he clearly did not have the untucked look so that it looked fly. It just looked disgruntled. And maybe his look was reflecting how disgruntled he feels at Green Bay, but it was not a fashion statement that I would necessarily endorse. But Tom Brady does get the Who Framed Roger Rabbit Villain Award for the day.
What did you think of the actual draft setup and the vibe this year? I know we mentioned on the mock draft show that it was going to be way different. It was going to be in person. It was in Cleveland, which was pretty cool. Those fans are very passionate. The one thing I'll say, I absolutely did not love the random chair in the middle of the stage with fans sitting. Like, what was that? I don't know.
I have no idea. I can only imagine there was like a Lazy Boy sponsor something element that somebody in marketing said, we're going to give a super fan a front row seat, right? That they got to be there for the historic draft. But it was really odd.
It was supposed to be Roger Goodell's chair from last year, but I didn't make that connection until somebody actually talked about it on the broadcast.
No, it just looked super out of place to me. It looked, all I could think of when I saw it is this is one of those sponsored elements that somebody sold for a lot of money. And they're like, we're going to make it work. No, this totally makes sense. Somebody had the idea and nobody else said, this is weird, right? I also did not we're trying to recreate Roger Goodell's basement.
Yeah.
That to me is why?
In the middle of an elaborate stage.
No, everything else looks this is a big moment, and then you're bringing us back to bad furniture that I think your wife was just excited that the NFL would pay to get rid of. Like, there was nothing about that to me that made the draft a better experience for the fans. It made it more about Roger Goodell and like why from his living room. I know some people said it humanized him, but it doesn't humanize him to take your entire basement and bring it to Cleveland. Like, real folks don't do that. So if you were trying to humanize him, you might want to try a little harder, because nothing in that said, oh man, this really makes me reminisce to the time when the NFL had to do the draft from Rodgers' basement because we were all stuck in quarantine because of COVID. Like, those are not memories I want to bring back. Like, so I don't get it. I don't like it. I didn't like the random chair. I thought it was, like you said, it was random. And trying to recreate his basement again was like, if I'm looking at that in hindsight, somebody's getting fired for that idea. Like, it's not bringing back a positive affinity. It's flashing back to a time that was really tough from a societal perspective. And I think it's really tone deaf to use that as like this setup for what you're going to set up when you're bringing fans into a live arena. Because some people are still in that place. And that's like to say, hey, we're not there anymore, but look, we're flashing it back like doodaloo, 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 like Wayne's World style to the basement. No, I'm not for it.
That's true. I think the draft's supposed to be about the players, about the guys getting drafted, not the commish. I don't know. That's
or
just
his basement.
Me. Yeah, or his basement. And it really ruined a really nice stage, too. I thought it looked awesome. Right. I loved seeing the players, that we had, of course, the new element of like the whole backstage area where everyone was separated. We saw some players, take some pictures together. I don't know if you saw the one moment of Jalen Waddle, the wide receiver who got drafted by the Miami Dolphins, where his whole family was trying to take a picture or a video of him, and he just pieced and he ran to the stage. Did you see that?
I did. I just wanted you to know that this was my impression of him. Like, how do you have your whole family there and you're just like,
maybe he was just quietly really excited.
No.
And he just forgot about his family.
Maybe he didn't want to go to Miami. Maybe he was mad. He's like, oh, I got this dude again. Like, I can't get away from him. Maybe it's not a happy reunion for him. Maybe this is,
We're talking about Tua, right?
Yes. Like, this was not anything that he did that he seemed happy to go there. Like, nothing in his reaction made me think, ooh, he wants to go to that team. Like, nothing about that. Like, if I'm a team who just watched, I'm like, did we make a mistake? Did we think there was chemistry and there's no chemistry? Like, what did we just do? Or is this guy in a room full of stunt doubles, right? Like, is this not actually his family? Did we put him in the wrong room? Like, I wondered everything about that interaction. Like, who does he not like? Why is he so mad? Does he hate warm weather? Does he not look good in orange? Is Tua
maybe he's taken the Aaron Rodgers script of not being a fan of his family.
I mean, it's possible. I just watched it and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it was a little odd. I mean, maybe I just thought like, I really didn't think anything of it at first. And I was just like, that was a little weird. Like, everyone's chasing him to try to take a picture and he just bursts to the stage like, peace.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought he was just excited.
It was completely bizarre to me. Completely bizarre. My take on him is that, I'm going to do this and say, we got to go to a break, but don't go anywhere because we have much more shade to throw.
Back here live with a very special guest. Urban Meyer has joined the show. Hey, Urban.
All I do is win. I got the number 1 draft pick. I'm with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm here. I am, however, wearing my shades because I'm heartbroken. I am crying on the inside. I may look tough on the outside, but I am crying behind these dark shades that I did not get to me, the human highlight reel. Can you imagine putting Trevor Lawrence, man of the great hair, first round draft pick with the Jaguars, with the human highlight reel?
I could not imagine it. It would be phenomenal, but you panicked into picking a running back when you didn't need one. What was that about?
I mean, I had to run. I felt the feel of the Jaguar and the chasing of my back, and I was like, shh, Jaguars are fast. They're fast, and I'm gonna get a running back. And now I'm dying on the inside because I didn't get my human highlight reel.
Kadarius Toney ended up getting drafted at 20th overall by the New York Giants after the Giants traded back because the Eagles traded ahead of them to take Devontae Smith. So they're like, whoop, we'll go backwards. We'll get Kadarius Toney and a first-round pick next year. And I actually really like this move by the Giants to get that first-round pick and one of my favorite players in the draft.
I mean, they were not the little Giants on that one. That was a giant move. Urban Meyer, actually gave him the play of the day on that one. They got me.
Some info. Something slipped. That's why you fired everyone.
I mean, I did. I fired everybody. So it's like, you ain't got no job. You got fired on your day off, right? These guys have just been through the most grinding time of the year, which is getting ready for the draft. And arguably I did pretty well, other than getting sucked into my Jaguar running phase. I missed my human highlight reel, but I fired everybody. I mean, I fired 4 guys. They've been there for since the team was born. There's one guy that's been there since the start of the Jaguars. But I got to do me. And these guys, I just got the best out of them because I got through the draft with them, and now I don't need them anymore. So you're out of here.
Urban, I have one more question for you here. So the question leading up was Trevor Lawrence was going to be the quarterback, but when is he going to get the conditioner sponsorship? That's what we want to know.
I've already mapped out my game plan to grow my hair like Trevor Lawrence in solidarity. Because remember, he's never lost a regular season game ever. True. So I'm not going to cut my hair until T. Lawrence, Mr. Number 1, all I do is win, gets a loss. So if he takes an L, I'll cut my hair back. But I don't think it's ever going to happen in his whole life. He's never going to lose. So I am going to be pushing hair it's not going to be curly like Palomalu. I mean, I would have to get into the curly iron thing. So, but I'm going to have hair like T. Lawrence. And so we already have the X's and O's mapped up. It's going to be XO, hair game strong with Trevor Lawrence. He's going to have a little signature on the bottom. It's going to be XO, TL, heart. And that's going to be it. And he's not going to come out with an endorsement deal. Head and Shoulders was all over it. I said, no, man, you don't even have flakes. So don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to your fan base. Pantene came next, which was tempting because he does have that perfect Pantene swag. However, what we went with is he's going to have his own hair care line. So that's the money play. We fired the whole scouting department so that they wouldn't leak that information because I don't deal with that in my organization. Important. But he's going to have his own line. That's my call. That's my play of the day. I'm sticking with it. And when you see my hair continue to grow, it's because all I do is win, and I'm not cutting it until we win. You say no shave November, I say I'm not cutting it until we lose.
Thank you, Urban. One more person has lost their job, Urban Meyer's barber. All right. Micah Parsons did get drafted, somebody that was a favorite of ours here at the Juke. And we spoke to LeVar Arrington before the draft about how he was prepping Parsons to get ready. And a spot that I didn't think he was going to go was Dallas. But Dallas, with the two corners going in front of them, decided to still go defense, which I like, and go with potentially the guy with the highest upside, linebacker Parsons out of Penn State. Your thoughts?
I'm in love with this pick. As we know, last year, I had problems with Dallas. It bothered me deeply to my core that there was no D in Dallas. And it was so painful to watch that the Dallas Cowboys went from, the Dallas Cowboys to the Alice Cowboys. No D, and it was painful. So what did we do? We got a guy who can do a lot, right? Like tremendous upside on Parsons, sideline to sideline, can help you in the run game, can also help you in the pass game, and can come off the edge. LeVar Arrington said he has that it factor. He could be that guy. And now you're putting him with the Jaden Smith. You're putting him with, what's his name?
Leighton Vander Esch.
Thank you, Vander Esch. I was about to call him Gary Vanderchuk, right? Like, no, not Gary B. Gary B is not on the Dallas Cowboys, though he might like to be.
He would be on the Jets.
I know, Gary B wants to buy the Jets, but that was the name that was sticking in my head as like, oh, you're playing with Vanderchuk? No, he would just tell you where to go and how to reach your maximum potential.
Yes.
Okay? So we'd have a highlight reel from life if that was it. But with Vander Esch, with Jalen Smith, and with Parsons, you're now seeing guys that can't be shut down. When I talked to Isaiah Stanback, he said, if you take a defensive end, I can chip you, I can make your life difficult. If you take a corner, I can throw to the other side. But those guys in the middle that are sidelines to sidelines can create real mismatch situations, and they're really hard to shut down. And coming from my linebacker roots, I can't help but say, this defense, if everybody can stay healthy with those three guys in the middle, there's going to be a lot of versatility and there is a lot of hustle. So you're going to have big problems as long as everybody's healthy and happy, right? We're not disgruntled, but we do have a new DC. So that should be good. I like this pick from the Dallas Cowboys. The one knock on Parsons was that he once upon a time had some character concerns and some immaturity. But we are assured that that was a thing of the past. Though they do appear to love him. Jerry Jones was like all over it. And he is a jokester. So we could see that energy and that, kind of spirit in the locker room and in the huddle, hopefully give an upgrade to that Dallas Cowboys defense that has been at best a bit stale.
Yes. And you could see his energy on the stage when he just bear hugged Roger Goodell and lifted him off the ground. By the way, impressive Roger Goodell landed on his feet after. That was pretty impressive. But I totally agree.
He's going to sit into the chair after.
Yeah, he was going to be like, I need a break, sitting in the chair. But Micah Parsons, I think, is going to be a major boost. I mean, we saw just a couple of years ago with this defense, the boost that Leighton Vander Esch gave them at linebacker to pair up with Jalen Smith. And they were one of the better defenses at that time. I think it's huge that they got Dan Quinn. I was listening to Dan Quinn's post-draft press conference. He was talking about how they may play more in their base packages, a little bit more 3-4, because some of their strength is at linebacker, and Parsons' ability to play on the edge may be, pretty interesting there. But of course, in the nickel packages, which is where they're going to play most of the time, it's going to be, interesting to see how they use those three linebackers in that system, whether he'll play edge or he'll play, linebacker, maybe, three-man fronts more often. I don't know. How would you look to run that defense just with that personnel?
Well, it depends. I want all of those guys on the field. Okay. So if we go into a nickel package and you're going to assume that then we're putting in a DB for one of our linebackers, that's when you take Parsons and you use him as a rush end. right? Then that's when you use him creatively. And so you don't even necessarily have to show it as much, right? Because he's still on the field, but you could play around with what's like a mobile, almost like a 3-3. If you had like a 3-3 stack, then you don't have to give away who's coming or from where. Makes it a little harder for them to get their reads, but allows us to bring in that extra guy, right? And then whether you have an off the ball rusher, right, who comes in and pressures the edge, because obviously if you're going into nickel, it is a passing down. Just FYI, guys, like when we say nickel, that means we're pulling one of the linebackers and going with 5 DBs. So we're expecting them to throw the ball. So we're not as worried about the big guys in the middle, but we are worried about the get after the quarterback. So that's when a multiple guy like Micah Parsons allows you to not necessarily have to pull him off the field in exchange for a DB, but allows you to keep those sideline to sideline guys who are your more mobile like linebackers, and allows you to kind of just shift how you're using them to shore up that outside contain and that get after the quarterback. So that's what I see. I would see like whether you line them up 3-3 stack, or you're saying it's 4-2, or you're just 3-4-ish, you know, with the angles just changing and walking that linebacker up. I think that's where he becomes really useful.
Yeah, even maybe bringing like Keanu Neal down, who is basically a safety, but they want to play him kind of more at linebacker. So you could have, you know, it is like 3 linebackers, but it's like 4 at the same time. So yeah, you could play around with that. And I would, if I was Dallas and Dan Quinn, and I'm excited for Dan Quinn because a lot of these years he's been playing, you know, the same style of defense. And I like that he's going to be able to switch it up and try some new things here with some creativity. I would be looking at the Bucs and what they do with Devin White and try to do the similar thing with the blitzing and just allowing him to be the athlete that he is, flowing sideline to sideline that way. I think it's going to be exciting for that defense.
Yeah, I think one of the good things too that you can see when you have that many pieces, right? When you have a safety that you can walk down, obviously it switches up so that you can throw the defense off, whether they don't know if he's going to come all the way down or if he's just lining there to throw you off on what the coverage is, right? And then you also have multiple linebackers, which really I would say Jalen can do it. Parsons can do it. Van Der Esch, I kind of want more in that middle. Not as much of that, but he is still mobile and he's very smart. So you kind of use him as an anchor, and then you move the rest of it around with the safety coming in and a change up. Not likely in your nickel package, right? But definitely doing it on some of those other downs where you think you have an advantage. And you can blitz him and drop one of the opposite guys or one of the guys near him because they are mobile, right? And anytime you can do that and throw off the count, which is what the O-line is looking. So if they're counting and it's here, that's the way that the line is going to slide, and that's who they're going to be picking up. So anytime that you can make the offensive line miss their count, i.e. then problems where the running back maybe goes out and they should have stayed in, and some of those things on the pre-snap read, then you have chances for disruption in the system. And the more guys that you have that are multiple, the more you can do that. And again, you referenced Todd Bowles' defense. Todd Bowles' defense, one of the things about that TBD is that's what you're thinking every play. It's TBD. You're not exactly sure what they're doing because of how interchangeable different elements are. And it might be a responsibility that's consistent, but not the player who's doing it. So I think that they're going to have a lot of fun. I also think that Dan Quinn is going to have a lot more fun as a D coordinator. Yeah. If I were him, having been a head coach and having your defense be so disappointing last season with the Falcons and being a defensive guy, for me to get to focus on the defense, I'm like, hey, wait a minute, you forgot about who you know. Right? Like he's going to be like, no, allow me to reintroduce myself. This is what I do is defense. And thank goodness, because the Dallas Cowboys need to do some defense this year.
Yeah, I think honestly, the defense in Dallas is the X factor of that division. If they can have a competent, not even great, competent defense with the offense that already exists and the advantage at quarterback that they have with Dak, they should win this division. So the X factor, I know that Dallas fans are used to throwing up the X. The X factor should be Parsons in 2021. Naji Harris is another guy that you loved a lot in this draft at the running back position. He goes to Pittsburgh. Your thoughts?
Actually, it's so interesting. I talked to Tony Richardson, who is obviously one of the best, fullbacks to have ever played the game. And I asked him who his favorite running back was. And he said, Najee, hands down. I said, where do you like Najee? And he said, Pittsburgh. That was it. Like, no question, no hesitation, no doubt. So when he went there, I was glad to see it. Now, as a Cardinals fan, I would have liked him to go to the Cardinals. I'm not going to lie. I think that would have been really useful for them. Yeah. I don't hate their direction, but I really liked him. Having someone compare him to Derrick Henry makes him really hard to look past for me, right? And yet with the Steelers, did they have a run game last year, Mitch? I mean,
no, they did not.
The run game in Pittsburgh was about as good as the defense in Dallas.
Yeah, that's pretty equal.
Yeah, even Pittsburgh could have run through the defense in Dallas because there was no D there. So now you take a guy who's going to help you right away in a big way. Steelers have to win this year. Okay, you can't start out as good as they did last year and end up as bad as they did towards the end of the season and not look at that and say, and really have to look at what were we not able to do. And that was, we were not able to run the football. Nobody had to guess what we were doing. So yeah, eventually they're going to be able to shut us down because we're not multiple. We can't even pretend that you have to play it honest because we've got nothing, right? Like nothing.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the offensive line because I thought their biggest problem was their offensive line coming into the draft. And he could be a very good running back and maybe he will make the difference there. But if there's no one blocking for you and no push up front, I do struggle to see how their run game is going to get better and evolve. I do.
Now, what I will say is, you don't know this, Mitch, but you questioning their O-line just hurt me deep to the core of my being. Why? Because their new offensive line coach was the assistant offensive line coach last year, and he is none other than Patriots great, 3-time Super Bowl champion, Adrian Clem. And so I have to believe that you have a dog in the trenches, right, in terms of coaching. And Adrian Clem rose quickly in the ranks of college football as one of the very best recruiters, and particularly in spotting offensive line guys who were not there yet, but could be. And that's where he made his bones. I remember distinctly when he was a GA, okay, so there's a 3-time Super Bowl champion who backed it up, became a GA in Dallas, and was developing guys. And I remember he calls me Buffy because, one, he would say, because you're buff, and two, because it was Buffy the quarterback slayer, and he used to come and watch me play all the time. So he was like, Buffy, come here, look at these two guys. And we're watching tape on 2 different offensive linemen, high school guys, granted. Yep. But he's like, which one do you like better? And I was like, well, this guy, I bet he's in a better program. He's really more complete. I think he has more of a strength program, but he's weighing way too much on his upper body. The feet are better on this guy. And if he doesn't have a great weight room program, which is one of the big differentiators for high school guys, he's going to have the upside. I go this guy. And he's like, and that's why I love you, Buffy, because the other guy's a 5-star, but I think he's topped out. He's like, this kid will trend upwards. So he is notorious for finding guys that other guys look past and making his way, from SMU out to UCLA and being known as one of the architects of the change in those programs. So I have faith in the offensive line because I have faith in Adrian Clem. So Clementine, this is Buffy talking to you. You better not let me down.
I like that info. It makes me a little bit more positive on what the Steelers did, because the Steelers went tight end, I believe, in the second round. So that's also interesting because they still have Eric Ebron there. Maybe they're looking to play a little bit more two tight end football to help that running game as well, potentially.
I would also like to see, just a really quick FYI, can we please look at the HBCUs and the fact that no players out of HBCUs were drafted? And Dion was flipping his lid over this, and I don't blame him, right? Because there are guys in the HBCUs that can go. And they obviously, a lot of those teams had to, for financial reasons, opt out of the fall, but they played in spring. So we may have looked past some guys because of that. However, what I am going to predict is that there is talent in the HBCUs that that teams are going to find, and we need to keep track on where those guys went, and of undrafted guys, how many of them from HBCUs make the rosters versus those who came from bigger name programs. Because I'm calling that there are hidden gems there, and that those coaches are on the phone. And hopefully there's some O-line guys in there, and maybe Clementine has some tricks up his sleeve to find them.
Yeah, I think this draft really made it difficult on the scouting, because there's so many players that, like, a lot of teams sided with the bigger programs, with the teams that they saw play, and have a lot of tape on. So just from a scouting perspective, it was easier to get a profile on those players, especially in the later rounds. And I think just from an overall perspective of the draft, we're going to see a lot of players, I think, in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds that end up being superstars because maybe they should have been drafted in the 2nd round, but they didn't play all the games, or they missed a year, or whatever it may be.
We're going to definitely see just how good certain teams were at doing their homework. And one of the things that I do know about Mike Tomlin too, is that when we came out of the Alliance of American Football, and when we came out of even the XFL, he was one of the Steelers. So I can't say it was necessarily just him, but that organization was one of the organizations who really looked at those guys and brought in quite a few of them, because he's really like, if you can play ball, I want you. And so he doesn't get as kind of, sold or hooked on some of that like pedigree stuff. Now, granted, you have to make it, but he will open opportunities for guys who may have been overlooked to make the roster, and he's known for that. So he is for that, as is Ron Rivera.
What did you think of the Harris homeless shelter party there at the draft?
Might have made me like so happy that I was talking about. I was like, okay, he was my favorite running back in the draft, and now he's like my favorite human overall. That was by far my favorite human moment of the draft, because now I just absolutely want to see him win in life, on the football field, the example he could set, the kids that he is already actively thinking about how he can upgrade the quality of their lives by showing himself as an example of what's possible in this world. I am all in on Naji Harris. Like I said, I was in on him on straight football, ball handling, downhill, like runner stuff. And what I saw is there's a reason why he runs the way he does. And he's got that it factor both on the field and off. And I am all the way here for it. I can't wait to see what him and Clementine do. By the way, Clementine, aka Adrian Clem, both of his boys play football. And do you know where they got their start?
With you?
They sure did. They missed seeing Clem play in his career. So his sons used to watch me play all the time, and they're like, Dad, your friend like makes all the tackles. They say her name all the time. And then the boys were not sure if they were going to play football, and they just came out with their dad to a camp that I did in LA. And, you know, we're going to help, right? Because it's girls camp. They were just there to hang out and like help. And the boys ended up like playing and really having a great time. And they have been balling out ever since. So on the field and off, I can't wait to see what Naji Harris does. And I'm glad he's in that organization because they are known for taking care of people too. It is one of the organizations that really does have a family feel and like a love for players, which is why you see them come back year after year after year. And Naji Harris may have grown up without like that family feel, but he just found his new family.
That's awesome. Another guy we're rooting for is Tylan Wallace, who was drafted a little bit later, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think 4th round. Was that right? Somewhere in there?
I think so. Yeah, I think you're right on that.
I think he was projected to go a little bit earlier, like a day 2 pick, but he slid to day 3 as one of the top receivers on the board. Baltimore ended up drafting him, and we've been preaching that Baltimore needs to get receivers. They get 2 potentially impactful receivers with Bateman out of Minnesota in the 1st round, and then they get our man Wallace a little bit later on. And I think they both could have an impact year 1. Your thoughts?
I think they will, and I think they're long overdue, to be honest, right? Like, you know, I think it's going to be really great to see what Tylan does. And even when we talked to Kelly Masters, she said with the depth of the receiver class, he could slide, right? Yeah. And him going to the 4th round really was less a reflection on his ability and his upside than it was the amount of good receivers that were in that class. The only one that I really knew was going to go where he did was, and he's not even a receiver, he's a tight end, but that was Pitts. Beyond that, I thought it was going to be really interesting to see when the receivers went, because the quote unquote, you know, 1st round definites there were a lot less of those in other positions other than quarterback than there were in receivers. So I could have seen, knowing that there were a bunch of guys who were really good, and that if you were smart, you could pick up one of those in later rounds. And I think that that's what Baltimore did with Tylan. So just because he's a 4th rounder does not make me think that he's any less good. It makes me think that Baltimore got a really great high value receiver in the 4th round, which speaks highly about the work that they did. And interestingly enough, OC Greg Roman today was just talking about how he was excited that dudes were going to see things Baltimore did never see before.
Did he say that?
Wait, hold on. Let me put on my thinking cap. Hold on.
Okay.
Now it's going to be my thinking cap. They're going to see things from Baltimore that they've never seen. Well, duh. That's actually called wide receiver play. And that's called getting out of the little lane that was like, oh, we got to be in the middle of the field and the tight end. And this is all we can do. And we're making our quarterback beat people with his sheer will and athleticism and a lack of weaponry. And now we're saying, thinking cap on targets. We have targets, guys. Do we even know what to do with these targets? Like, I don't know. But I think it's going to be actually pretty magical to see what happens when they have wide receivers, and defenses can't just say, hey, if we stop that one thing, we're good, because they don't have anything else.
And I'm excited because Lamar can be a good passer. We've seen it. He just needs guys to get open so that he can throw it. And now he'll be able to throw it outside the numbers, which is nice to see.
Right. Like they couldn't go outside the numbers last year, right? Like we actually saw Des Bryant, who I love, come in and make an impact as a guy who hadn't played in a few years, because they literally didn't have targets.
Yeah.
And that doesn't take anything away from Hollywood Brown and stuff, but he can't do it by himself, right? Like defenses are predicated on our 11 shut down your 11. If our 11 really only have to worry about shutting down your 9, even with a super freak talent like Lamar Jackson, like who is, also a human highlight reel and could be a human joystick and all of these things, right? Like he is dope, he is talented, but he also is not throwing the ball to himself. And if you want him to actually be a dual threat, right? Like so that he can run and pass, how about we give him a few targets? I mean, it's just a nice thing to do. Can we give the guy some targets?
Yeah, they also signed Sammy Watkins as well from Kansas City in the offseason. So, yeah, it's
Which I love.
Interesting.
Which I love. I love this Sammy Watkins. I mean, I think Baltimore they were formidable last year, right? But they could be a little dangerous this year.
Yeah, they did lose, of course, Orlando Brown in that trade to the Chiefs, and they lost a bit on defense, which they recouped in the draft. So they're going to have some fresh faces on defense, but I think Lamar's ability to actually have threats on the perimeter will make them, just as good, if not better, and more compelling.
I do miss my big boy Judon on that team, though. I used to like him. I know.
Yeah, he's on my team now.
Yeah, I know. And it's interesting, Mitch. Somebody was trying to say, well, his productivity wasn't as okay. Yeah. Some guys, their productivity is actually pulling double teams. Which allows other people to get sacks. So we can't just look at the impact of a defensive lineman simply in terms of his penetration. Do we want him to do that? Absolutely. But I always say, like, with defenses, there's a shiny penny philosophy. I don't know. Have I told you my shiny penny philosophy?
No, what's the shiny penny before we go to the break?
So your shiny penny is this, right? Like who do I have to stop? Aaron Donald is a shiny penny. Okay. If my team has the ability to shut him down, maybe we double team and we have 2 guys that can do it, or minimize his destruction is probably a better way to put it, right? You're not going to shut him down, but you're minimizing his destruction. But it took you 2 guys. So having a shiny penny means that teams have to game plan to shut that guy down. That means somebody else is being not as attended to. And that means their productivity will increase. So guess what? Then when their productivity increases and they start getting all the sacks, all of a sudden the teams are like, oh, we got to stop that guy. And he becomes the shiny penny. So great defenses actually set up shiny pennies that might be 2 weeks on, and then that they're probably not going to be the guy. So you then create some blitzes to highlight another guy, or you put 2 guys on the outsides that they really have to choose which one is going to destroy you. And then it's like maybe it's this guy. Nope. And then we shift to this guy, and then it's this guy. So it's not always going to be consistent, but when you do have destructo guys, it does tend to not only devastate offenses, but to raise the sack count or the TFL count of other players, because they're often dealing with double teams or a team's best one-on-one matchup. So, shiny penny.
I'm glad you said that, because the Patriots defense is all about those unsung heroes. After the break, we'll talk about the draft, winners and losers. Stay tuned. We are back here on the Juke. It's Mitch and, of course, Dr. Jen Welter. If you enjoy what you're hearing here right now, make sure you do hit us up on Instagram, Twitter, follow us at the Juke Pod.
Hit that little follow button on here too, so you make sure to get all our notifications when we are going live. If y'all don't know, if you missed it before the break, I've got my thinking cap on. Just like the Baltimore offensive coach who now has to actually look outside the numbers, bitch.
Yeah. I think they should follow. What do you think?
I think that they should follow. Follow.
All right, time for some winners and some losers of the 2021 NFL Draft. I have a few winners in mind. I actually really enjoyed, for the most part, what 3 teams in the AFC East did, a trio of teams. So starting with my favorite draft, that was perhaps the New York Jets. I really enjoyed what the Jets did. Of course, not only did they get their franchise quarterback, Zach Wilson, at number 2, but they were able to trade up in the first round to secure some protection for Zach Wilson with Elijah Vera Tucker, who could play guard or tackle for them. In the second round, they got a wide receiver to help him in terms of weapons to throw the ball to. They also added, just overall, I felt a lot of different complementary pieces. And it finally felt like the Jets had a cohesive vision and plan this offseason from free agency to the draft. And I honestly cannot remember the last time I can say that.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. For the first time, Jets fans should feel good. I reached out to a friend of mine, John Carr, who is the head of college scouting with the Jets. And of course, like, he can't tell me anything. Like, I know better than to ask, right? Like,
yep.
He knew Saleh was going to get hired before he was. And we were talking Bieniemy like the day before. And he was like, yeah, Bieniemy felt like he did really good in the interview. And I'm like, right. So I get it. And I respect him. So I wouldn't even ask. But what I said is, how did you feel about the draft? I'm like, first of all, did you survive? Right. That was my first question, was like, human level. I know that your eyes are probably crossed right now, and not teaser crossed, like your eyes are crossed because you watched so much tape. And nobody knows these guys better than him. But I said, are you okay? And he's like, yep, survived. And I said, how did you feel about your draft? And he said, if we drafted him, I liked him. And sometimes that's not the case, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, well, we really wanted this guy at this spot. I feel really good about 1 and 2, but it may not be this. And he just flat out said, if we drafted him, I liked him. And knowing that John Carr was the architect of the Texans, getting Deshaun Watson, really spying like the good Texans talent that we unfortunately saw Bill O'Brien not be able to do much with. But those rosters used to be stacked, and those rosters were built by John Carr. So the fact that he felt that good about their draft, I feel good about it.
Yeah, I feel great about it. Of course, I have to bring up my Patriots, not just because they're my team.
Oh, I thought you were going to say your hair twin.
Oh, no, well, that's Zach. Looked great, by the way. I like the suit choice. Anyways.
He did, and he didn't have the Mac Jones walk, so we're good.
People were talking about his mom, though, now that we're on this.
Wait, we got mom jokes already? Wait,
no, mom jokes already. His first interview, literally, I think the first question, maybe second, they're like, how do you feel about having a hot mom? I'm like, why is this the first question you're asking this kid who just got drafted?
I mean, I'm now I kind of want to see how hot his mom really is. But like, yeah, that's a little disturbing, be the first question. But then again, I gotta say, if it was the first question that he got or the second, he's used to that question by now. And he's like, yeah, mom's is hot, right? Like he's probably like, all the kids used to come over to my house to like check out my mom.
Yeah. All right.
And she taught me how to do my hair. So
my Patriots did end up with Mac Jones, as we discussed, and I love the fit. But they also nailed, I thought, the second day. They got Christian Barmore, the interior defensive lineman from also Alabama.
Divine.
Yeah.
And we know Saban and Bill
Belichick
are like
two peas in a pod.
Powers unite. So you already know that if Bill's going to pick up somebody from Alabama, it's literally Saban going, yeah, that's your kind of guy. And that means not only is it your kind of guy in terms of the way he plays, but it's going to be a guy who's going to fit in your organization. He's going to do all the things that you ask him to do. He got the strong. So, yeah, can't help but feel good about when those two get together.
Yeah, they obviously upgraded the defense, Barmore, and then they also added Perkins in the third round, who was one of the better pure pass rushers. So Belichick has just continuously added to that front seven that was absolutely horrendous last year, in my personal opinion. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't get to the quarterback, but they've added at least 5 or 6 different players up front that is going to increase productivity up there.
And putting them with the defensive genius that he is, I mean, come on. And some of them may not work. Right? No. Like, we know that about him. But does he have some gems? Yeah. And does he know he can shine up the pennies that he had? Like, let's think about it that way. He's got some pennies and he can make them shiny pennies. And he will scheme them to a way that really fits with what their abilities are. And that ultimately is what so many teams miss, is getting the guys and then actually knowing where they'll be successful and putting them there. It sounds really simple, but it's not always that simple.
I actually have something for you here on the Mac Jones pick.
Yes.
So with the Mac Jones pick, Bill Belichick, actually, this has been released on Twitter, his old scouting report from his days in Cleveland and what he's looking for from his quarterback one. Do you want me to list off the categories of what he's looking for?
Yes.
Okay. So number 1 is to make good decisions. Then arm size, physically tough leadership. Guys look up to and have confidence in. A real competitor. Accurate rather than a guy with a cannon. Emphasis on our game will be on decision, timing, accuracy. A guy who needs to be confident. Intelligence is important, but not as much as field awareness and judgment. Can't be sloppy fundamentally, with ball handling, technique, etc., footwork, drops, release. Quarterback has to be able to throw the ball with accuracy. Offense, to be successful, must be able to run the ball, pick up the blitz, pick up third downs, and score. That sounds a lot like Mac Jones to me.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And, I think the good thing for him is that he's not going to have to play right away. You can develop him because there's a lot of work to do to be ready to be, the man there. But he obviously knows that that's what he's got and somebody he can build into. Remember, Bill is not a guy who tends to feel like he has to play quarterbacks right when he gets them. That, Jimmy G developed, right? Tom Brady developed. Like, Bill Belichick will develop quarterbacks. And some teams say it, right? Like the 49ers will say, it would be okay if he doesn't have to play within 2 years, like Trey Lance, right? And people were saying, we don't believe that. Well, again, it used to be the rule of 3. Now, I know that you think that you traded up to get this guy at number 3 and you feel the pressure to play him now. But do you want a Tua? Do you want a Tua situation? Because I know you don't. You really don't want to take that guy, throw him in the fire before he's ready, then take him out because he got cooked, and then his confidence is now cooked, right? So I would rather have somebody who has the wherewithal to take the time to develop a quarterback, knowing that from a longevity perspective, oh gosh, look what we did with Tom Brady. I'd say we were pretty successful in actually taking a little time to let this guy to hedge our bets and increase the likelihood that he'll be successful. You don't need him to play right now. You have Cam. So allow him to be there, get him really good at the things that he needs to be really good at, but don't force it. Because this new trend with forcing quarterbacks to be the guy, regardless of whether or not they're ready to be the guy, has led to a lot of great upside guys, carrying a clipboard because they were either broken physically or broken mentally.
Right.
So good for Belichick. And I also think it's a smart move on the 49ers. Who cares if it takes you 2 years? If you get the guy who can literally transform your franchise for 5, 10, 15 years because you waited 2. And by the way, the 49ers don't need him right now either, then you're being really smart. So for those people who don't get it, it used to be a rule of 3, and that was the golden rule when it came to quarterbacks. So if we're saying 2 now, we're still admitting that timeline has been accelerated, and you're still saying we got a guy on his rookie deal and we could build a team around him, but we're not willing to, to take a potential diamond and just throw him to the wolves and see if one of them gets a grill after.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I think the Patriots are in a luxury position where they do have a superstar, like a former superstar MVP quarterback, where it's not like all this pressure to start the young kids. So totally. No. I would like to give a quick shout out to the Dolphins. I thought they also had a pretty awesome draft, just upgrading much of their defense, also going with Waddle in the first round, getting my favorite edge rusher, Jalen Phillips, at getting Kid Canada Holland in the second round, who I told this story on my live stream. I actually was in a camp with him and his brother when we were young. So that was interesting to see him. That was fun to see him get drafted. But the losers of the draft, we have to talk about it. It's a must thing. I want to start with the team that I know I've been ripping them all off season. I feel bad at this point, but like, honestly, they just continue to make me scratch my head. That is the Las Vegas Raiders. They reached in the first round, picked a tackle who's consensus on everybody's board to go in the second round. You could have traded back, still picked him in the first round, but picked up some more picks. Instead, they pick him there, and then they pick 3 safeties in the draft. What are the Raiders doing?
Wait. Okay. There are several defenses and situations where you might go nickel. And we tend to talk about like a 3-4 versus a 4-3. Mm-hmm. Not many times do you talk about like a 4-2-5, right? And that's kind of what you're saying. When you just pick 3 safeties. Now, can you bring one guy down and maybe convert him into a slot? Can you play with them at linebacker? Of course you can. We at the Cardinals converted Dion Buchanan, who was a safety. We walked him down to the inside linebacker position. It can be done, but on a team that has so many things that I feel like they're missing.
Yeah.
I don't think that they got the memo that the team with the most safeties wins. Like, unless they got safety, right? Like, is that what they were trying to say? Like, we win if we get the most safeties. And did we get confused because we were thinking that would be like end zone pin back? We got points because
maybe it's just because they couldn't sign any safeties that worked out because they had to end up cutting them all. So they're just trying to get as many darts thrown as possible. So eventually they'll land 1 or 2 that will work out.
I mean, I just don't understand what the strategy is. I heard the same thing about him being second rounder. So I was like, why did this make sense?
And it's nothing against the player too. No. It's all about if you could have gotten more value, take the value.
Right. It has nothing to do with, we want you to have some help there. But that's kind of what I did. It was like, and but your GM has been a TV personality for a number of years. Chucky has been out of coaching. So what you start to wonder is, did the Las Vegas Raiders, in terms of their front office and coaching staff, get more sizzle and substance? Because 3 safeties, I mean, I don't think anybody's draft board anywhere would have said, we got to get 3 safeties.
My other loser in the draft was the Houston Texans because, first, they didn't have a first round pick. They didn't have a second round pick. They didn't pick until the 3rd round. Their first pick in the 3rd round, there was a run of quarterbacks being selected. They were like one of the last teams to pick this quarterback. They picked Davis Mills in the 3rd round. My problem here, so if Deshaun Watson sits out, let's say he sits out, which is apparently the rumor. Okay. You're going to get the first pick anyways.
Behind bars.
You're going to get the first pick anyways. Are you really going to end up with that 3rd round pick as your starting quarterback? Or are you going to pick a quarterback regardless next year? I don't know. That's just me. And then whenever you come away from a draft with literally no players that could be a part of your team in the future, that's a problem.
It is a problem, but I think what you're seeing right now is that, the reality is that Deshaun Watson by the day looks less and less viable. He didn't want to be in your organization anyway. And I haven't heard anything lately about all these cases, but the last thing that I did, it was like, 22 accusations and all of that. Doesn't look likely that he is going to be out and running around. And if he is, he's going to be running away from Houston. So let's just say that who has had some of the worst career luck of anybody I can ever think of. You got your lung punctured by your very own team.
Yep. Jen, are you
like
still
the
there?
Team doctors. And I don't know.
I think Jen's experiencing some issues. I don't think it's me, but I'm not exactly sure. Anyways, hopefully she's still there. But regardless, overall, the draft was very fun. I loved the experience. I think Jen's gone. All right. So personally, over at the Bottom Line View, which is my channel, you'll be able to find some of the clips from this show that we take from Twitch. So consider subscribing over there. But we had a live stream during the event, and it's always fun seeing the different fan perspectives from everybody involved in the draft. And, just seeing the different reactions from a Cowboys fan, seeing two cornerbacks being picked ahead of their team, and then, getting a linebacker and then being Parsons and still being excited about it. And, me having picked Mac Jones for my team, it's just the different emotions that a fan experiences throughout the course of the draft is perhaps the best part about the draft. From pick 1 to pick 32, even in the second and third round, getting those guys that are considered values, that's always a fun part of the draft, in my opinion. In terms of the teams that I think could be helped the most from the draft, I think one team that we didn't mention was the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have had an epic offseason. What they've been able to do to transform their defense, adding a linebacker in the second round who was considered a first-round talent, adding a cornerback in the first round with Newsome in free agency, getting Clowney and Troy Hill and John Johnson. The Browns are legitimately, and I don't feel a lot of people are talking about this, at least in the mainstream quite yet, but if Baker Mayfield can be, just as good as last year, maybe a little bit better, the Browns are going to be a dangerous team in the AFC thanks to this awesome offseason they've had. Jen, are you back?
Back. Apparently the information was so good, we just had
I think the Texans took you off the air. I think they booted you.
I mean, they were mad, and I would be too. Actually, I was not going to say anything about the Texans with that one. But Ty Taylor, the fact that you got your lung punctured by your own team med staff. Like, there's been so many points for him that he has been so close. He's a conscientious worker, a great dude. I know him personally. But you do have to have a backup plan for him, especially considering the lung, right? Like I can't actually say that, I have faith that it will work for him. Like, it's unfortunate, but it's a little true. So I understand the pick, and I heard such good things about the quarterback anyway, that I don't hate it for the Texans, because if they can actually get him in and he can learn with a year, again, being as a backup for a year, and then he may be your guy, and you definitely are going to need a guy. And there's not that many guys next year relative to this one. So I don't hate it. I think he was too hard to pass up for them at that time.
I'm just worried that if it doesn't go well for Tyrod.
Look, they're a hot mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just worried that if it doesn't go well for Tyrod. Sorry, I think we're off sync a little bit on the internet, but if you can still hear me, I was just saying Tyrod Taylor, if it doesn't go well for him and the Texans might feel forced to put Mills on the field too early. And like we were talking about with the other young quarterbacks, it might not help his development. Now they also have Ryan Finley, who was a 3rd or 4th round pick a couple of years ago. He started some games in Cincinnati, including beating the Steelers on Monday Night Football last year. So maybe they would go with him and put Mills as their 3rd reserve quarterback, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but what I can say is him as a guy, like I heard such tremendous upside of him that I do like him. And I think he was too good for them to kind of let go, especially considering where he fell to. Yep. And knowing that their quarterback situation is unstable. Them as an organization, like you have the Hoover Dam right now that looks like Swiss cheese. So you got a whole lot of things to plug and you really got to figure out.
All right. So that is it for the Juke. The 2nd week we have gone live and I'm excited to continue this on Twitch. Again, guys, you can find some of the clips from this show if you missed it. Tomorrow will be on my YouTube channel, The Bottom Line View. Make sure you do follow us here on Twitch to get updated right as we go live and follow us as we're live. As well, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and all the social media platforms. Jen, do you have anything you want to plug?
All I do is win. Number 1 draft pick. My heart is broken from my human highlight reel being taken from me. So because I was so mad about that and I got, a running back instead with my Jaguars, I had to fire everybody.
All right. Thank you, Urban Meyer. And
Urban
that is
Meyer
it.
Out.
Peace.